But everything we do, it has to be based in data, especially working with enterprise level companies where there's always a question of, what is the bang for the buck behind this initiative that you're asking us to do?
Well, hello, everyone. This is P. Funk from Exact Marketing, and here with me today is John Caiozzo of TenStrat Performance Marketing. John, welcome. We are doing a little state-by-state road trip, learning of the challenges and the successes of marketing agencies across the country.
Yeah, thanks for having me aboard, Paul.
My pleasure, John. My pleasure. Tell us how TenStrat operates and why you operate the way that you do, John.
Yeah, we started this company a couple of years ago. We're a 3-year-old agency and really started out of the traditional model of agencies. The founders and myself, we've worked in-house. We've been agency side. Some of us have owned small businesses over the years, and just a lot of interactions with the agencies that we've worked with in our careers. Yes. The agency model had just been broken. You would get pitched by the senior leadership team and the senior strategist from an agency. And then as soon as you sign the dotted line and things get started, and after you have that initial handoff, you get handed off to a lot of specialists or people who have, 1 to 2 years of experience in their field. And you just don't get what you were initially pitched. So that's kind of where we got the idea for TenStrat. We've all been in our respective fields for more than 10 years. So we have a good chunk of expertise. Like I mentioned, we've all worked in-house agency side. Some of us have owned small businesses. So we really understand, if you're an enterprise company, how that works, the different layers of bureaucracy, how to help you navigate that. And if you're a smaller to medium business, we also understand that side of things too. And we plug in very nicely on that side and try to understand the core business model and what are the services or products that are really going to be the most profitable. Where do we spend our time that's going to make the client look like a rock star? So that's how things got started. A lot of referrals at the very beginning, and now we're trying to grow our reach, grow our influence, and try to become more of a branded name. But that's definitely a journey. So that's where we're at today.
Very cool. Appreciate that info, John. I read that philosophy is centered around trusting in data and analytics to hypothesize, prioritize, and test of innovative growth strategies on your website. Very direct statement. Do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, throughout my career, I've kind of leveraged the scientific method. So I'm very big on A/B testing and user testing, and just doing small things and understanding the impact of those things and trying to quantify them before we really pitch a larger project to a client. So all the tests that we do, we try to have some data background on the test. So what is the hypothesis? Is there something wrong with a page on a client's website that we think is driving a high bounce rate? Is there a particular page type that has a lower conversion rate? We look at those things to come up with the hypothesis, and then the thing that we want to test, and then we try to validate that hypothesis. But everything we do, it has to be based in data, especially working with enterprise level companies where there's always a question of, what is the bang for the buck behind this initiative that you're asking us to do here?
Very cool. Very precise. I love it. And are there specific channels that you focus in because of that approach?
Yeah, so personally myself, I've been doing SEO for the last 11 years, but the other co-founders here, we all have done, paid search. So we have some paid search experts on the team, some paid search and paid social experts. We do some conversion rate optimization as well too. That's something that I have a good chunk of experience working with. So on my end, really SEO and CRO, and then some of our other founders, paid search and paid social.
Excellent. What would you say was your most successful channel or platform for the agency in 2024?
Yeah. For the agency itself, it's LinkedIn. That's really where we get a lot of engagement. People find out, hey, you guys have left your various corporate careers and gone on to start something. We used to work with you. We'd love to do something with you, or we need help in area X, Y, and Z. It's been a really good channel for us to get engagement, get potential leads as an agency. On the client side, paid search and SEO has really been where it's been at for us. In particular, local service ads have worked really well for our clients in the lead generation space. We've also done a lot of really good integration work on the SEO side with client product teams and becoming part of that product development lifecycle and just establishing trust and having access to dedicated resources that is really make or break when it comes to SEO, at least.
Right. Makes sense. Makes sense. So was there something missing in 2024 that you want to concentrate on in 2025?
Yeah, so from an agency's perspective in 2025, what we're looking to really focus on is growing partnerships. So growing partnerships with SaaS providers in the SEO space, the paid search space. Would love to leverage those relationships and start to grow our network that way. Personally, myself, putting myself out there. I pitched myself at a couple of conferences. I'll be going to Brighton SEO and speaking there later this year on how to integrate ChatGPT and leverage generative AI to become more of a technical SEO for people who are a little bit more content focused or not quite as technical focused themselves. So yeah, we're really looking to grow through partnerships, go through conferences, through webinars, and through more referrals.
Yeah, it seems like there is a lot of opportunity to help people catch up or keep up.
Yeah, and there's so much changing very quickly with generative AI. I think it's a pretty significant paradigm shift that we're coming across as an industry and just as the human race too. There are going to be a lot of jobs where ChatGPT could replace it. You could also augment it too. And that's personally what I'm finding, at least in my role, is that I'm able to do a lot more work and really kind of focus on the strategic lens of things, and I'm able to offload a lot of the grunt work or a lot of the basic Excel spreadsheet work to models like ChatGPT. And that's been a huge lever, and that's something that's allowed us to scale without having to hire a lot of people.
Right, right. Very cool. Appreciate that. And how are you obtaining new clients today? Is there a specific approach that works in your part of the country that you think may not work in other parts of the country?
Yeah, I think it's something that can work for everyone. A lot of the clients that we get, they're through referrals. They're through happy clients who have referred us to other people who are in need of services and just turning things around often. Like we find there are a lot of companies where SEO or even paid search can be neglected, or people are just spending money on the wrong things like their brand when they don't really need to be spending on their brand. And we're able to show really significant results very quickly by becoming really integrated with the company. So for us, a lot of it's just referrals and it's success stories. But we're trying to change that. We're trying to branch out, trying to get more referrals through partnerships, and just trying to grow our overall visibility and awareness in the digital landscape.
Good. Yeah, that makes sense. And I've heard that before, certainly. Something else that I captured on the website was the focus on scalability. And that seems to be a huge challenge when you're trying to do outreach, trying to scale up, and then trying to maintain quality and even trying to maintain margins at times. How do you go about that at TenStrat?
Yeah, definitely. Like I mentioned, a lot of us, we've worked enterprise and we've worked on very large websites where, everything is one template, but you maybe have 100,000 pages, maybe you have 1,000,000 pages behind that template. And everything we do, we try to ensure that it scales. So if it's a recommendation on how to change your bidding strategy, we want to make sure that that's something that's going to have a very wide reach in terms of budget or in terms of ROI. with SEO, we're not just looking at individual page level changes. We're looking at how do we change things at a macro scale for a product listing page or product detail page template for a client. So we really try to focus on the area that's going to have the most impact, and that's quite often through scale. And one of the ways that we were able to scale is we're able to use a lot of generative AI to do some of the work that allows us to scale across individual pages if we do have to work on individual pages and do that tens of thousands of times.
Great detail. Appreciate that. So it seems to me, and this isn't a question that's on my list, but it seems to me that those first meetings with a new client must take some time. It must be quite a consultative and deep dive when you're in front of those clients.
Yeah, 100%. We try to understand, where is the business at today? What are the biggest problems that the business is facing, and what can we help with right away? After that initial session, we then have to understand, who are all the different people in the company, who are the different teams that we're going to be working with, what are those relationships like? Does the client prefer to reach out to those folks internally, or do they allow us to reach out to them directly and CC them and hold them in the process? But a lot of it is just understanding, what is not working today, what are the things that we really need to focus on, and the lines of products or lines of services that we really need to dig into, and what even is like the profitability behind each one of those two, so we know which ones we can really push on at the beginning with something like paid search or paid social for that client to get the biggest bang for their buck. But yeah, we really do try to ingrain ourselves, understand the different layers, the different people, even the different roles sometimes when working with different types of changes across the website too.
Yeah, I'm so curious about that process. So is it a 4-hour meeting? Is it a day-long meeting? Do you prefer to do that in person versus doing it virtually?
Yeah, we have not done it in person yet. A lot of our clients are across the country in different locations. Some, of course, are in Southern California area, but a little bit further away from us. But as far as those meetings go, typically we have 1 week up front where we will meet several times throughout the week. So we'll maybe have 3 to 5 meetings that week, depending on everybody's availability. And that's really just for us to get things started, understand where the business is at, what those problems are, and who everybody is and how it all plays together, make sure we have the access that we need to get started and all the tools that we need at our disposal to be effective. So that's really the first week. Second week is typically, where we begin more the detailed auditing process. So if we've already done an audit, we're going to dig a little bit deeper now that we have access to more tools, more analytics, more data. That's really where we start getting into the weeds is week 2. And then weeks 3 and 4, depending on how many layers deep we have to go and how long that analysis takes, weeks 3 and 4, we start to come up with the plan and the timeline. In some cases, we'll already have that plan and timeline, so we may already be a little bit ahead of the curve there. We may start actually implementing, but we'll actually build out that timeline so the client can see, here's what we're actually doing in month 1, month 2, month 3. What do we think the impact of each initiative is going to be? And then based off of that, we may adjust course throughout the engagement as well too, based off of things that are working versus things that are not working. So the plan is not static. We change it based off of what we see is working in the market.
Sure. Well, that's quite a bit of detail. And I imagine you share that with the client up front, like here's week 1, here's week 2, here's week 3, here's week 4, so that they're ready to invest the time necessary to succeed with you.
Definitely. And a lot of the time it's getting the buy-in too of the different groups that we'll have to work with to be effective in the organization. So if that's the product team, we're upfront with them. We let them know, hey, we're going to need some dedicated story points, or we're going to need some dedicated resources on your end to implement these tests or make these changes on the website. If it's folks within the marketing team and getting approval on different creative assets, different campaigns that we're going to run, we get that in place as far as ahead of time as we possibly can.
That's interesting. So on the workflow front, how do you acquire the contact? Is it somebody within the agency that is communicating to that client, or do you get an ambassador inside the client
Yeah.
for you? Just
Yeah.
curious about it.
Usually in my experience, we tend to have, like a client champion. So we'll have a central point of contact who's really the main sponsor behind our program.
Mhm.
And they're really the facilitator. So they'll help, unlock those different doors to the different teams, let us know who we need to work with, who we need to reach out to. And we start to, very slowly build trust with each group, and we just try to be very upfront with them on what we need and what they can expect out of us. And anytime that we're doing something and we have results from that, we share that back with them so they can see the value in the work that we're doing and their time and their resources as well too. Because often we're asking them for resources and time to get things done.
You guys must be very strong communicators, and kudos on that process. I know that's
Yeah, we try to be. I think we're pretty good at it, but there's always room to be better.
You touched on some of the things earlier on automation, etc. Is there something we're in this very transformational time? AI is coming at us a mile a minute. Is there something that you're looking to add as far as helping you be more productive or deliver better analytics or better overall results?
Yeah, we a lot of different things. We often try to brainstorm and think, what are the tools that we could build as an agency, even using generative AI, just to kind of build some basic functionality for us to get things spun up. But for us, kind of the recurring themes are often forecasting. So where do we think things are headed in terms of revenue, traffic for different clients? What are some of the initiatives that we could do that could influence those things? So forecasting is something we do every month. We reforecast with the client too. So we'll give them the initial forecast of where we think the year is going to go. Here's the upside potential we could reach if we implemented everything flawlessly and on time. And then, of course, as the year changes, here's how things are actually shaping out. So that's been a big area of focus for ours. Another area of focus is just it's finding different ways to optimize, say, like client product feeds for both SEO and for paid search, and doing that in a way that scales. We don't have the time to go through and look at each product and say, hey, this is a t-shirt, it's a blue t-shirt, it's for a man, adding all these different attributes and really filling those blanks. That's something that we have to rely on generative AI to effectively scale. So we have that process down. Kind of the next challenge, I think, is coming up with a tool that will do it in an automated basis, so we're not sending clients one-off optimizations for their feeds. So those are just two areas, but there's so many other applications just to speed up things day to day, like getting Excel formulas, writing ad copy, writing headlines and descriptions, summarizing things. So there's a lot of applications that we use generative AI for on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, it seems like everybody has an expanded tool chest, if you will, these days, and continuing to add things. And your forecasting sounds like a real differentiator. I haven't heard that very often in these conversations.
Yeah, and it's been tricky. The last couple of years we had COVID, and that was a very tricky event to forecast and how it would impact different businesses. So that was a pretty big curveball. So it's something that we've tried to stay in front of as much as possible with clients, just to set the expectation up front. They may be expecting double digit growth, but based off of numbers that we're seeing, maybe single digit growth is more realistic. Or maybe specific segments of the business may grow, but other segments may decline. So just really being very transparent and setting the expectation of here's what we see happening with the client is very important. You don't want to end up in a situation where your forecast is way off base because you didn't really look at how things are really trending out, how they're performing in practice, and now there's a very big discrepancy on what was forecasted and where the business actually came in at.
Yeah, my experience has been when you can share that type of detail, it really sets expectations and both sides understand the expectations and you can really communicate more clearly about the results when you're both on the same page.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, we'll often put in the caveats of here are the key projects that we have to complete. Here's the timeline behind those projects too, because some projects you may see the return immediately. Some may take several months for you to see that return. It's a very gradual return over time. So being very clear upfront on the timing and the potential lift of things, assuming everything goes well and according to plan, and that you get the resources and the buy-in you need to get them executed, that's huge. And then of course, you can also throw in some wild cards of, hey, we really don't know what's going to change a year out from now. ChatGPT search may be huge. Maybe they take 5% market share away from search, and people start to pay a little bit more attention to ChatGPT search and spend more time there versus the traditional model of really just focusing on Google.
Right. Tremendous detail. I really appreciate you sharing that, John. Is there any advice that you would offer to other marketing agencies today as they navigate these times?
Yeah, especially with things like Operator that ChatGPT has announced, where it's an actual agent that will interact with the web on your behalf. We may find in 2 to 3 years that we are optimizing websites for bots and we're not really optimizing them for users anymore. So things can change very quickly. So yeah, definitely just stay on top of things. Also test things out, even if they're experimental or brand new. So, things like Operators, you can probably find a lot of applications for that right now, even if it's in its very infant stage. That could save you some time. It could automate some tasks for you. And being an early adopter definitely has its advantages right now with generative AI and just finding different ways to utilize it, stay ahead of the curve, and be able to answer questions from clients too. There's a lot of uncertainty that clients have about generative AI and just how big is ChatGPT for my business? Are we getting a lot of traffic from them? Are we getting a lot of conversions? Or have things really not changed much for us yet, but there are certain things that we want to keep an eye out for and different thresholds that we want to put in place so that we know, hey, if we see ChatGPT traffic over this amount, then we're going to start putting a little bit more focus on different ways we could optimize for LLMs.
Fantastic. John, last question here is, what would you tell a potential client that is considering your agency versus another?
Yeah, I'd say there are a lot of agencies out there. What differentiates us from other agencies is that, like I said earlier, we're all veterans in the space. You're not going to be working with anybody when you're working with TenStrat that has less than 10 years of experience in their respective field. And the advantage that we bring is, like I said, a lot of us have been in-house agencies. Some of us have owned small businesses. So we really do understand and can put ourselves in your shoes of just your day-to-day, the challenges that you're facing, and how we can really make your business turn around and make you shine in front of your boss. So that's definitely, some of the big differentiators for ourselves. And of course, we have a lot of experience trying to scale things up with generative AI, and we're staying ahead of the curve. Whereas a lot of companies right now, they're just not investing a ton of time in generative AI, and I think it's really something that's going to be quite disruptive in the next couple of years here.
I agree with you. So we've been speaking today with John Caiozzo of TenStrat Performance Marketing.